They gave my sister a BMW and me a rusty bike. Now they work for me. So, I'm Amanda Carter. I'm 28 now, but this isn't really about now. This is about what it was like growing up in a family that looked perfect from the outside, and how being the extra kid shaped just about everything I thought I knew about love and belonging. We lived in this beautiful colonial-style house in Westport, Connecticut. Big front lawn, manicured hedges, Christmas lights up before Thanksgiving, all of that. My dad, Dr. Carter, is a renowned cardiovascular surgeon. My mom, Diane, is a child psychiatrist who wrote a few well-reviewed books in the 90s about emotionally attuned parenting. Yeah, wrap your head around that one. They had 2 daughters. My little sister Emily was born when I was 6. Blonde curls, big blue eyes, baby Gap model vibes. She loved dolls, ballet, and followed Dad around like a duckling. I was more into building things, Legos, code, soldering kits. I made my first website when I was 12 and taught myself HTML off an old stack of library books. I even built a fan page for Emily's dance team. Not because anyone asked me to. I just thought it would be cool. No one in the family ever even mentioned it. When Emily got her braces off, the whole family went out to that French place in New Haven that takes a month to get a reservation at. When I got mine off, my mom left a post-it on the fridge. Make a dental follow-up before school starts. There was never a moment, really, when it all flipped. It wasn't like one big betrayal. It was death by 1,000 small dismissals. Emily's science fair project was a papier-mâché volcano that barely erupted, and she got a photo on the fridge. Mine was a robotics project that used proximity sensors to navigate a maze, and my dad called it a little overcomplicated for middle school. At first, I thought maybe I was just imagining things. That maybe I was being dramatic or jealous. I even brought it up once when I was about 15. I still remember it. I said to my mom, "Do you think you guys are harder on me than you are on Emily?" She didn't even look up from her phone. She just said, "Amanda, you always make things so heavy. Emily is younger. Let her be the baby for a while." That, while never ended. Emily got weekly piano lessons, tennis coaching, SAT prep classes. When I asked to take a summer coding camp in New York, it was this incredible program with speakers from Google and MIT. My dad looked over his glasses and said, "That's a lot of money for a hobby." For my 16th birthday, I asked for a laptop. Nothing fancy, just something faster than our shared family desktop. I got a gift card to Best Buy for $100 and a card that said, "You're resourceful. Make it work." Emily got a brand new iPad 2 years later with a pink case and a handwritten note from Dad, "To help you become the amazing doctor I know you'll be." That phrase, amazing doctor, it was like a prayer in our house. She'd been saying she wanted to be a doctor since she was 10, and it was like the entire family's collective energy rearranged itself around that. My mom would talk about it at dinner parties like it was already fact. "Emily is going to med school," she'd say, sipping wine. Meanwhile, if I said I wanted to start a freelance design business or go to art school, the vibe shifted immediately. "Backup plan," my dad would ask. "Something with stability?" I never rebelled. I didn't slam doors or dye my hair or sneak out at night. I just started folding in on myself. I taught myself how to create CSS animations in my room with headphones on. I started doing freelance gigs for local businesses by 16. I got accepted to Carnegie Mellon for computer science and interaction design. Full ride. The first thing my dad said when I told him, "You sure you want to go that far from home?" When Emily graduated high school, they threw her a garden party. Catered. White tent. Fairy lights. A live string quartet, for God's sake. I had to help set it up the night before. My mom handed me a list like I was the wedding planner. I even made the printed programs in Adobe InDesign. When I graduated, we got takeout. Chinese. I still remember the fortune in my cookie. It said, "Your talents will be recognized and suitably rewarded." My dad handed me a Hallmark card with a $25 gift card to Amazon and said, "If you want to make something of yourself in business, maybe this will get you started." Then he chuckled like it was the most hilarious thing he'd ever said. I laughed too. What else was I supposed to do? I live in Boston now. I work for a firm that does UX for nonprofits. I've built apps for crisis centers, educational platforms, therapy startups. It's meaningful work. But every time I come home for the holidays, I still get asked if I've thought about going back to school for something more serious. Meanwhile, Emily is in her 2nd year of med school, and my parents still talk about her like she's curing cancer in the basement. I don't hate her. That's the thing. Emily's not the villain here. She grew up adored, sure, but she never rubbed it in. In some ways, I think she noticed too. Sometimes she'd thank me a little too earnestly when I helped her study for bio exams. Like she knew, but she never said it. No one ever did. It's weird growing up in a house full of applause and knowing none of it's for you. You start to perform anyway, hoping someone will finally look up and notice. Sometimes they do. But most of the time, they just keep clapping for someone else. I didn't expect them to cheer when I chose a state college, but I guess a small part of me still thought they'd at least pretend to be supportive. When I told them I'd enrolled at Eastern Connecticut State, my dad raised his eyebrows and asked, "That's still accredited, right?" My mom followed it up with, "You're going to miss out on a lot of opportunities not being around peers who challenge you." That was her way of saying I wasn't going to Yale like Emily. Emily, of course, got a spot at Yale Med, full ride from the bank of mom and dad. New MacBook Pro, a $600 ergonomic desk chair, full wardrobe overhaul, apartment in New Haven with custom shelving to help with organization, and a parking pass for her Prius, which my dad transferred into her name the week she moved in. My mom made a binder for her with color-coded tabs for financial aid, health insurance, and course planning, even though none of it was actually coming out of Emily's pocket. Meanwhile, I was hauling a secondhand suitcase up 3 flights of stairs into a shoebox dorm room with chipped paint and a radiator that clanged like it was trying to escape. My desk had a corner chipped off, and the mattress looked like it had been through 3 decades of bad decisions. No laptop upgrade, no Target haul for dorm decor, no help with books or meal plans. Just a quiet, passive expectation that I'd figure it out because, well, I always did. I got a job at a local cafe half a mile off campus. It was mostly night shifts, which worked out since my class load was heavier in the mornings. The manager, Carla, was blunt but fair. Paid minimum wage plus tips, which helped, but barely stretched past food and the occasional textbook rental. I got used to making one coffee last through a whole shift and stealing leftover pastries at close, tucking them into napkins to eat back at the dorm like some squirrel hiding rations. But the thing that kept me going wasn't the job. It was Print-to-Go. I'd started it the summer before college, just a simple idea. Make branded merch for student clubs, especially the ones too small to afford custom bulk orders from big companies. I'd built the site myself in 2 weeks using a free CMS and a Shopify backend I hacked into shape. The designs weren't fancy at first, just basic logos, puns, and inside jokes that only people in those circles would get. I printed them myself at night in the dorm basement using a vinyl press I found on Craigslist for $90. By the second semester, it was pulling in real money. Not insane startup money or anything, but enough that I was making between $800 and $1,200 a month, depending on how many student groups needed shirts or mugs, or those stupid silicone wristbands everyone still loved for some reason. I'd get DMs on Instagram from club presidents asking for rush orders before events. I started sleeping less, living on caffeine and the thrill of opening my PayPal account to see it tick up a few more bucks every day. The dorm reeked of instant noodles and dry erase markers, and I shared it with a roommate who spent most nights vaping out the window and complaining about her econ professor. I didn't mind. As long as she stayed out of the way while I worked, we got along fine. I'd set up a folding table by the window, lined with clear bins labeled by size and club name, and I packed orders while listening to podcasts about design theory and startup funding. Sometimes I'd lose track of time and look up to see it was past 2 in the morning, the whole hallway silent except for the low hum of the mini fridge and my own exhausted breathing. I tried to explain it once to my parents. We were on a call. Well, technically a FaceTime Emily started that they looped me into, and I mentioned that Print-to-Go had hit $1,000 that month. My dad blinked and said, "Is that before or after expenses?" I said it was after. He said, "So you're making pocket money." My mom added, "It's good that you have a hobby, Amanda. Just don't let it get in the way of real work." I wanted to hang up right then, but I didn't. I smiled and nodded and said, "Yeah, of course." And then I went back to work packing an order for the Environmental Science Club, who'd requested an earth-toned color palette and biodegradable poly mailers, which I special ordered even though they cost more because it mattered to them, because they cared. And honestly, that meant more to me than anything my family had said to me in months. At one point, I had 15 active clients and enough backlog that I had to turn down new requests. I hired a girl from down the hall, a junior named Kayla, to help with packing. I paid her in cash and pizza, and she never asked questions. We'd sit on my bed surrounded by stacks of shirts and laugh about the ridiculous slogans students came up with. She called me boss, like it was a joke, but part of me liked the way it sounded. I wasn't saving the world, but I was building something. Something mine. Something they couldn't take away or ignore or reduce to an online game. Emily would send group photos from her white coat ceremony, smiling in that practiced way our mom taught us both, but only she ever mastered. She looked polished, radiant, like someone who belonged in a glossy alumni magazine. I'd sit on my twin bed in a hoodie stained with transfer ink, checking customer reviews and trying to figure out how to scale without burning out. They didn't see any of it. Not the hours, not the hustle, not the bone-deep fatigue that came from doing 3 jobs and never feeling like enough. To them, Emily was the achiever. I was the hobbyist. But every time someone ordered from Printigo, every time a package got picked up with my logo stamped on it, I felt just a little less invisible. A little more like I belonged somewhere, even if it wasn't with them. By junior year, I was running on fumes. Classes, cafe shifts, order packing, answering emails at 2 a.m. It had all started to blur into this never-ending sprint. I wasn't failing, but I wasn't exactly thriving either. I just kept telling myself to hang on, that eventually something would break in my favor if I just kept showing up. And weirdly enough, that's exactly what happened. It was in this 8 a.m. business elective I only signed up for because it fit between my two other Monday classes. Foundations of Brand Communication, taught by some adjunct I hadn't heard of, who wore linen suits and used slides with way too many bullet points. Half the class was still asleep every time we met, including me. I usually sat near the back with my laptop open, trying to knock out Printigo invoices while pretending to take notes. We were told to pitch a real-world example of a brand strategy we had experience with. Most kids gave dull presentations about Nike, Apple, or whatever internship they'd faked on their resume. I figured I'd just talk about Printigo and be done with it. I didn't even put together proper slides. Just a quick mock-up of our website, some sample designs, and a breakdown of how I'd scaled it from zero to monthly revenue. I remember I was halfway through explaining how I priced bulk orders by tier and managed fulfillment with a dorm closet and a vinyl press when this woman in the back row, not the professor, raised her hand. She had short platinum hair, a leather notebook, and this stare that felt like an X-ray. I paused. She just said, "How are you marketing?" Not a judgmental tone, just genuinely curious. I told her the truth. Instagram mostly. Some Reddit groups. Occasional campus flyers. Word of mouth. She nodded, scribbled something down, and said, "Your margins are garbage, but you have something. Finish your pitch." After class, she walked right up to me. "Amanda, right?" she asked, flipping her notebook closed. "I'm Monica Reed. I used to run Velometrics, marketing software for e-commerce brands." I didn't know who she was. Later, I Googled her and realized she'd exited her company for 8 figures after a major acquisition. I don't know what made her stay after guest lecturing that day, but she did. She bought me coffee that same week, sat across from me in this drafty cafe off campus, and asked a million questions. How I handled production, how many orders I processed, how I sourced materials, whether I'd ever considered licensing out designs to national campus orgs. She didn't speak like someone trying to impress me. She just listened. Then she said, "You've built a real business without any help. Imagine what you could do with the right help." That was the first time anyone outside my little student circle had said anything like that. Not, "Nice project" or "Cool idea," but something that felt like belief. Not the condescending kind either. Real belief. Like she saw something under the mess of my student life that I hadn't dared to claim for myself. From that day on, she started mentoring me. Nothing official, just weekly calls and emails with subject lines like, "Don't screw this up," or "Let's fix your pricing model." She tore apart my spreadsheet with the ferocity of a surgeon and taught me how to calculate break-even points without relying on guesswork. She introduced me to this guy named Raj who ran a local print shop in Hartford. He offered to handle my printing wholesale at a rate I couldn't have negotiated in 100 years on my own. Through Monica, I got my first real B2B client. It was this boutique fitness studio that wanted branded gear for a 6-week bootcamp series. Then a small vegan bakery ordered staff aprons and canvas bags. I created a package tier for them with design refresh, color matching, and delivery included. It felt surreal. I'd started out printing joke shirts for campus improv clubs, and now I was negotiating contracts with business owners in their 30s and 40s who actually respected what I did. Monica kept pushing me. She made me redo my entire website, ditch the pink and mint aesthetic that looked like a Tumblr page, and rebrand with a more polished layout. "You're not 12, she told me. "Make it look like you're ready to get paid." She was ruthless, but always fair. When I got stuck in analysis paralysis, she'd say, "If it's not broke, test it anyway," and force me to try new things. I remember showing my parents the updated website over break. My mom scrolled through it for maybe 12 seconds before saying, "Still doing that little project, huh?" I said, "I made $1,900 last month." My dad asked, "So, when are you going to think about a real career?" I wanted to scream. Instead, I just nodded and closed my laptop. But that night, I sent Monica a screenshot of the new order volume with the subject line, "Not bad for a fake job." She replied with a single line, "Told you." Every win felt sharper because no one in my family acknowledged them. When Emily got published in a med journal as a co-author on some case study, they framed the cover and hung it in the hallway. When I landed a supply contract with a regional tech bootcamp for their staff uniforms, my mom asked if I'd gotten around to applying for any grad schools yet. It didn't matter. Not anymore. Because every week, Monica would call and ask how I was doing. And she didn't mean emotionally. She meant what numbers I hit, what clients I followed up with, what mistakes I made. And every time I thought I'd reached my limit, she'd show me where I still had room to grow. She taught me that success wasn't some magical blessing given by people who already loved you. Sometimes it came from total strangers who recognized your fight and handed you a better weapon. That spring, I moved the entire production out of my dorm and into a rented shared space off campus. I signed a lease myself. No cosigner. No parental safety net. Just me. And a company I built when no one else thought I was capable of anything but falling short. I should have known better than to go. Honestly, I don't even know why I showed up. Maybe some fragile, delusional part of me thought things would be different this time. That maybe all the late nights, the orders packed by hand, the contracts signed on sheer grit, maybe all of it would finally mean something to them. But instead, I ended up standing in the driveway in heels and a damp dress, watching my sister unwrap a brand new BMW while everyone applauded like she'd just cured cancer. It was one of those overdone suburban afternoons. White tent in the backyard. Folding chairs. Mini quiches no one actually wanted. I had driven up from campus the night before, staying at Kayla's place because I couldn't bring myself to sleep under that roof again. I'd spent the morning finalizing an order for a local startup accelerator that wanted branded kits for their new cohort. 10 boxes, 60 hoodies, custom embroidery. My hands still smelled faintly of vinyl glue. The party was exactly what I expected. Emily looked polished in that effortless way that seemed to follow her everywhere. Perfect makeup, lavender shift dress, little gold necklace with a molecule on it like she'd just walked off some med school Pinterest board. Everyone kept saying the same lines on loop. So proud of you, Emily. Yale, huh? What a future. Your parents must be over the moon. Then came the moment. My dad cleared his throat in that smug, theatrical way he always did when he wanted attention. We couldn't let such an occasion go uncelebrated, he said, pulling a car key fob out of his pocket. And I already knew. Before he said it. Before they all turned to look toward the street. It was parked there with a silver ribbon across the hood. A 5 Series. Midnight black. Shiny like a showroom floor. Emily's hand went to her mouth in that perfectly performative gasp. People clapped. Some man I hadn't seen since middle school actually teared up. My mom kissed Emily on the cheek like they were filming a commercial. Then, as if choreographed by a sitcom writer with a mean streak, my dad turned toward me. Everyone did. I was standing maybe 10 feet away, holding a paper plate with a sad little slice of grocery store cake. My hair was frizzing from the humidity. My shoes were digging into my heels. And then he said it. And for Amanda, he announced, smiling like this was the punchline. We've got something too. He gestured to the side of the garage, and there it was. A bike. An actual, rusted, second-hand bicycle with a crooked front wheel and a red bow slapped on the handlebars. It looked like it had been pulled from the back of someone's shed. Maybe it had. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. People laughed. Not loudly, but enough. Enough to burn. My dad looked right at me, still smiling. She doesn't need a car anyway. She's never going anywhere in her life. And that was it. That was the moment. Not the car. Not the bike. The line. The way it came out so smooth, like he'd been sitting on it, saving it for a crowd. No one said anything. Not my mother. Not Emily. Not the neighbors. They all just kind of chuckled or sipped their drinks or looked away like it was some harmless dad joke. But it wasn't harmless. It cracked something open in me that I'd been patching over for years with business plans and late-night ambition and the sound of vinyl peeling off its backing sheet. I didn't make a scene. I didn't yell or cry. I just nodded, set my plate down on the porch railing, walked over to the stupid bike, and rode it. The dress I'd worn was white with a navy belt. I'd bought it for $20 at a thrift store downtown because it looked clean and summery and adult. Now it clung to my thighs in the rain that started halfway through the ride back. A light drizzle at first, then one of those summer bursts that soaks you in seconds. The bow on the bike dissolved into wet tissue. My mascara bled into the corners of my eyes. Cars passed me on the road, and I imagined what I looked like to them, some drenched idiot in heels pedaling on a rusted bike in a storm. By the time I got back to Kayla's, I couldn't feel my fingers. She opened the door and just stared at me, speechless. I peeled off the wet dress in the bathroom and sat on the edge of the tub, shivering in silence. The rage had passed. All that was left was this cold, clear focus. That night, I sat at her kitchen table with a mug of tea and my laptop. The only light in the room came from the screen. I opened the email draft I'd been sitting on for weeks, the one to the investor Monica had introduced me to, someone who'd liked our numbers, someone who'd said, "Call me when you're ready to take this seriously." I read over the message one last time, added 2 sentences at the top, then hit send. Subject, Printigo, ready to launch the scale-up phase. Let's talk. Seattle didn't feel like a new beginning. It felt like hitting the gas pedal after years of stalling out in neutral. I didn't even have furniture the first few weeks. Just a mattress on the floor of a half-furnished sublet with one working outlet and a door that stuck every time it rained, which in Seattle meant constantly. But I didn't care. I wasn't there to be comfortable. I was there to build something that mattered. Evolve Commerce wasn't some overnight revelation. It was an evolution, a mutation born from the pain points I kept seeing in every small business I worked with during Printigo's last year. People had great products, strong local followings, even solid demand, but their back-end systems were a mess. No scalable infrastructure. No unified dashboards. Half of them were still tracking inventory on Excel and sending invoices manually. I wanted to build something that fixed that. A kind of hybrid between a lightweight e-commerce front-end and a real B2B integration tool that didn't require a degree in software engineering to use. Something intuitive, customizable, fast. The kind of thing that could give a handmade soap brand in Montana the same logistics clarity as a mid-tier tech company. Enter Eric Sullivan. Monica introduced us after one too many rants on my part about needing someone who could write code that didn't break under pressure. Eric was quiet, sharp, and absolutely relentless in the best way. The kind of guy who could build a CI/CD pipeline in his sleep and still catch a typo in your UI copy before the build deployed. I showed him the prototype on Figma. He stared at it for 5 minutes and said, "Yeah, this could work." That was all it took. We didn't bother with fancy offices or investor brunches. We had a rotation of coffee shops with good Wi-Fi and lenient policies on loitering. The baristas at 2 of them knew our names and exactly how we liked our lattes. We lived on instant noodles, leftovers from places with 2 for $1 dumpling deals, and whatever snacks we could afford from Trader Joe's if we hit a good week. Our sleep schedule was a joke. 4 hours on a good night. Maybe 2 if we were debugging something that refused to cooperate. But none of it felt like suffering. It felt like momentum. Our first real client came through a cold outreach email. A small chain of handmade furniture stores in the Pacific Northwest, family-owned, beautiful stuff, but stuck on an ancient web builder and manually handling every order. I still remember sitting in a booth at a cafe off Pine Street, walking the owner through a demo on my glitchy laptop, while Eric tapped away beside me rewriting half the API calls in real time. She signed with us on a Tuesday. By the end of the month, her online sales had jumped 38%. That changed everything. Word spread faster than I expected. Not viral, not explosive, just this steady hum of referrals and interest. People who had been scraping by started to see the value of real infrastructure. Not bloated enterprise software they couldn't afford, but something built for them, by people who'd been in the trenches too. Owners emailed us at midnight with follow-up questions. We answered. We always answered. I didn't think about the people I left behind. Not consciously, but sometimes I'd be up at 3 a.m., pushing another update to the front end or writing copy for the next pitch deck, and I'd remember my dad's voice. "She's never going anywhere in her life," and I'd laugh under my breath. Not because it was funny, because it was over. Seattle wasn't clean or pretty or easy. But for the first time in my life, I was building something with someone who didn't need convincing. Eric never once asked if I was sure. He just said, "Let's get it done." And we did. Day after day, hour after hour. No safety net. No fallback plan. Just 2 people in coffee-stained hoodies with bloodshot eyes and this engine of an idea that wouldn't quit. There's this strange moment when you realize the thing you built to survive is now the thing you have to manage. That's what hit me the day our bank account updated and showed $500,000 sitting there, clear as day, transferred in from a real venture fund with a real name and a real contract that I'd spent 2 nights sweating over with a lawyer we could finally afford. I didn't cry. I didn't celebrate. I just stared at the screen in silence, then turned my chair toward Eric and said, "We need desks." That funding round changed everything. Not in the abstract way people talk about on podcasts, but in a very real, logistical sense. We stopped working out of coffee shops and signed a lease on a small space in Capitol Hill. Exposed brick, bad lighting, pipes that creaked whenever someone flushed in the building. But it was ours. We bought secondhand chairs, put up whiteboards, stacked cases of ramen in the corner just in case, and started hiring. I remember putting up our first job postings, thinking no one was going to take us seriously. But they did. Not because we had clout or pedigree. We didn't. But because the product worked and word had spread. The applicants weren't startup tourists looking for unicorn equity. They were scrappy, smart people who'd been freelancing too long or burn out on agency work or sick of working on pointless features for bloated apps. They wanted in because they saw what we were doing and thought, yeah, this could matter. We hired 20 people that quarter. Customer support, sales reps, front-end and back-end devs, one brilliant QA lead who refused to use Slack but caught more bugs than anyone I've ever met. There was no onboarding flow, No neat training schedule. Just long days, messy code, late nights with frozen burritos and half-finished Trello boards. We were making it up as we went, but it worked. The platform started to feel real in people's hands. Furniture stores, bakeries, pottery studios, independent bookstores. They started messaging us saying things like, "I can finally take a weekend off," or "I didn't know how bad our old system was until we switched." We kept shipping updates, simplified the dashboards, added multilingual support, built out order tracking with SMS notifications. The tools weren't fancy, but they were reliable. And that counted for more than I ever thought it would. Revenue crossed 1.2 million by the end of the year. 1.2. I used to scrape together $20 for coffee and train fare, and now we were issuing invoices with commas in them. We had 150 businesses on the platform by December. Some were doing 50 orders a week. Others were scaling faster than we were. But they all stayed. The churn rate was almost nothing. When I asked one of our earliest clients why they hadn't jumped to a bigger name when they had the chance, she said, "Because you answer your phone when something breaks." That stuck with me. I still worked 14-hour days, but now I had people. Real teammates. People who believed in this thing not because I made them, but because they saw what we were building and wanted to be part of it. I'd walk into the office and see the support team walking a customer through onboarding, the sales lead negotiating a deal with a local brewery, the developers arguing over code patterns and API limits. And for the first time, it didn't feel like I was carrying everything by myself. It was still chaos. It always is in the beginning. But it was focused chaos. Purposeful. And at night, when the lights dimmed and everyone logged off, I'd sit at my desk, close the 30 browser tabs I had open, and breathe in the silence. Not relief. Not pride. Just the strange, quiet hum of something finally working after years of not. It started like any other RFP. A massive tender, dense with legalese and back-end requirements, buried in attachments that took 3 people 2 days to parse. We weren't even sure we wanted it at first. Hospital systems were notoriously slow, bureaucratic, allergic to flexibility, but the scope was undeniable. Full e-commerce integration for a medical supplier network, multiple locations, centralized inventory, secure ordering for everything from scrubs to diagnostic kits. It was the kind of contract that could lock in a year of runway and open a dozen more doors. So we submitted. Polished demo, custom proposal, compliance packet thick enough to stop a bullet. Didn't even think twice about the name on the list of affiliate partners. Hartford Medical Group. Just another client buried in the stack. It wasn't until 2 weeks later, when we got the call for an in-person pitch, that someone on the sales team flagged it. One of the senior practices involved is Carter Surgical. That your dad? It was. Of course it was. The meeting was set in the old administrative wing of the main hospital, the kind of place that smells like carpet glue and old coffee. I wore a blazer I didn't really like and boots that clicked too loudly in the hallway. Eric came with me, along with Dana from sales. We ran through the deck in the Uber like we hadn't already done it 100 times. I didn't know what I was expecting. Maybe a handshake. Maybe nothing. What I didn't expect was to walk into the room and see him sitting there at the head of the table, flipping through our printed proposal like it was a menu. Same haircut. Same posture. Same unreadable face. My mother was there too, off to the side, with a legal pad she didn't write on. Emily wasn't in the room, but I could hear her voice faintly down the hall, probably charming someone 2 departments over. He didn't stand. Just said, "Amanda," like we were strangers on an airplane who'd just realized they shared a last name. I nodded, introduced the team, launched into the pitch like I was presenting to any other panel. I kept it tight. Clear value props. Data on fulfillment improvements. Case studies from clinics in the Midwest. Secure access for tiered staff. Nothing personal. Nothing small. Just the product. When I finished, there was silence. A few nods. A question about user permissions. Then he spoke again, this time with that casual smirk that used to make me flinch. "So," he said, leaning back, "I assume there's a family discount in there somewhere?" There it was. The old joke. The old angle. Like we were playing out some scene he'd been waiting to star in. I smiled. Not polite. Not cold. Just enough. "We don't do discounts," I said, keeping my voice flat. "Not even for people who gave me a bicycle." The room went quiet. I didn't look at my mother, but I could feel the shift in her posture, the sharp breath. My father's mouth twitched like he wanted to laugh, but couldn't figure out how. Eric broke the silence by moving to the technical appendix. Dana fielded the budget slide. I didn't say another word until we were back outside, walking toward the car. That night, I got an email from the hospital board's procurement officer. We were shortlisted for the final round. 2 vendors left. Ours and some legacy system out of Chicago. I didn't forward it to anyone. I just stared at the screen for a long time, thinking about how sometimes the past doesn't show up to haunt you. Sometimes it shows up just in time to watch you win. It didn't happen with a champagne pop or some dramatic wire transfer. The exit came on a Tuesday. Rain outside. Half the team was remote. I was wearing the same hoodie I'd had since college and eating cold dumplings at my desk. The final call with the board ended with a short, almost anticlimactic line. Congratulations. It's done. That was it. After 2.5 years of working 14-hour days, of debugging in back seats and negotiating with logistics firms between Zoom calls, Evolve Commerce had been acquired. 95 million. I kept 20%. Not that I ever thought I'd see even a fraction of that. Most of it went into the foundation. I called it the Carter Foundation for Entrepreneurs, which pissed off my father more than anything else I've ever done. That wasn't why I did it. But it didn't hurt. We built it for the kids who aren't golden children. For the ones working 2 jobs and running Etsy shops in dorm closets, who are told that their ideas are hobbies and their futures don't belong to them unless someone else gives permission. The fund doesn't just cut checks. We do mentorship, seed capital, operational support. No pedigree required. Just grit. People ask me what I did first when the deal closed. If I bought something extravagant or took a vacation or moved into some penthouse. I didn't. I walked into my new office, an actual office, not a corner of a shared workspace or a booth at a coffee shop, and unpacked one thing first. The bike. Same frame. Still rusted. Same warped front wheel. I'd kept it all these years, locked in a storage unit, moved from apartment to apartment like some bizarre artifact. Now it hangs on the wall behind my desk. Polished. Untouched. With a small brass plaque underneath it that says, never going anywhere. Sometimes people ask about it in meetings. Clients. Investors. Press. I just tell them it's a reminder. Because that's all it ever was. A moment. A line. A symbol of someone else's limited imagination. And I didn't let it define mine.